Have you ever felt like your voice was stolen?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like that thing that makes you was just ripped away.
Mm,
It's a tough thing to imagine,
that
right?
is.
But that's exactly what happened to J.E. Reich,
Oh, wow.
a journalist and writer based in Boston.
Okay.
And their story
Yeah.
is a deep dive. It's about resilience,
Hmm.
the just chilling reality of online hate,
Right.
and the power of finding your voice
Mm.
amidst unimaginable adversity.
Wow.
And hey, if you're into this kind of stuff, deeply researched stories, the human experience and all that,
Yeah.
make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.
Yeah, you don't want to miss these. So, what I think is fascinating here is how J.E.'s story is intertwined with, one of the darkest chapters in recent American history, the 2018 Tree of Life synagogue shooting.
Oh, wow.
J.E. had a personal connection to the synagogue and felt compelled to speak out, penning this really powerful essay for Vanity Fair.
You would think that speaking out against hate would be met with support.
Of course!
But this act of courage, tragically, it put J.E. directly in the crosshairs of a stalker.
Oh.
It's almost unbelievable to me, How could someone read an essay denouncing hate and then decide to target the author with even more hate?
Right.
It really makes you think about the dark undercurrents that exist online.
Absolutely. And this wasn't just like a few nasty comments or emails. The stalker fixated on J.E. and their family like for years,
Wow.
subjecting them to hundreds of harassing calls, death threats, even like terrifyingly specific threats like beheading.
The fact that this went on for years is just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
What was going through J.E.'s mind during all of this?
Right.
Did they have any idea who was behind it?
So initially, J.E. assumed the stalker was a white supremacist.
Right, which makes sense given the nature of the threats.
Yeah, yeah. But as the FBI investigation unfolded, that assumption proved to be incorrect,
Wow.
which highlights just how complex and unexpected these situations can be.
It's a stark reminder that prejudice and hate can come from anywhere, shattering any preconceived notions we might have. To be living under that kind of threat,
Right.
constantly looking over your shoulder, it must have felt like living in an alternate reality.
That's precisely how J.E. described it. This wasn't just like an isolated incident,
Yeah.
It was a sustained campaign of terror that invaded every aspect of their life, eroding their sense of safety and agency. The psychological impact was immense.
Did they try to talk to people about what was happening? It seems like it would be so isolating to carry that burden alone.
They did. They did try to talk to people, but it was met with difficulty. You can imagine the fear of being disbelieved, judged, or even seen as, burdening others.
Hmm.
That isolation, unfortunately, is a common experience for victims of stalking.
That's heartbreaking to think about that added layer of suffering, right?
Yeah.
That comes from not feeling like you can share your experience. Makes you wonder how many people suffer in silence, afraid to speak out.
You raise a really important point. The fear of not being believed can be paralyzing. But thankfully, J.E. made the crucial decision to work with the FBI,
Okay.
a step that ultimately helped break that cycle of isolation and set them on a path towards justice.
Okay, let's unpack this. How did working with the FBI help in this case?
Well, gathering evidence was critical, and a lot of that evidence came from call recordings. The sheer volume of calls they were able to document was, like, staggering. 238 recorded calls submitted as evidence,
Wow.
but likely hundreds more that went unrecorded.
Wait, there were potentially hundreds more calls. That's just horrifying.
Yeah,
It paints a picture of an obsession that spiraled completely out of control.
it really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was relentless. And you know what's even more chilling? The recording software was only installed on the phone later on.
Right.
So meaning we're likely only seeing like a fraction of the total calls J.E. received over the years. It's a terrifying thought.
So with all that evidence, the FBI was able to identify and arrest the stalker, right?
Mm-hmm.
That must have been such a huge relief for J.E. and their family.
It was a major turning point, but the fear didn't just vanish overnight,
Right.
The stalker was initially released on bond,
Oh.
leaving J.E. in a continued state of vulnerability. Like, imagine that. Finally getting a sense of relief,
Yeah.
only to have it ripped away by the legal system.
That's a cruel twist of fate.
Yeah.
To go from feeling like you're finally safe
Yeah.
to being right back in that state of fear. It must have been incredibly difficult to cope with.
It was, and then came another chilling discovery. Machetes were found in the stalker's possession.
Oh, gosh.
This wasn't just an abstract threat anymore. It was a tangible reminder of the potential for violence, especially given those specific threats of beheading.
That sends chills down my spine. It really highlights how quickly online hate can spill over into real-world danger. You start to wonder, How many other cases are out there, lurking beneath the surface?
It's a sobering thought, and as the legal proceedings moved forward, the process itself took a toll on JE. The stress of the ongoing case, the inability to discuss it publicly, the feeling of living this double life.
Yeah.
It all contributed to a sense of being trapped in a system that felt both necessary and suffocating.
It's like being caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
On one hand, you need the legal system to protect you, but on the other hand, the process itself can feel so isolating and overwhelming.
Exactly. And for JE, who is a transmasculine, non-binary person, navigating the legal system in Florida, a state with a history of anti-LGBTQ legislation, added another layer of complexity to the experience.
It makes you realize how many systemic barriers exist for marginalized communities seeking justice. What was it like for JE during the sentencing hearing?
Well, leading up to the hearing, JE had to prepare to deliver their victim impact statement, which is, a daunting task under any circumstances.
Yeah.
But given the political climate, JE felt this added pressure of presenting, confidently in court.
Right.
Acutely aware of the potential for judgment and bias.
It must have felt like having to put on a suit of armor just to walk into that courtroom and face their stalker.
That's a powerful image,
Yeah.
and it speaks to the resilience and resourcefulness that so many individuals have to tap into when navigating these systems.
Yeah.
But even with all of that, the emotional toll was undeniable.
Right.
JE was experiencing anxiety, heart palpitations, all those, physical symptoms of the trauma they'd endured.
It's a reminder that trauma impacts the entire body,
Yes.
not just the mind. It's not something you can just compartmentalize and ignore.
Absolutely. And as JE stood in the courtroom preparing to deliver their statement, they held on to their mother's necklace.
Yeah.
This tangible connection to family and faith in that moment of immense vulnerability. It's a detail that really stuck with me.
It's a powerful image. This tiny object imbued with so much meaning,
Yeah.
becoming a source of strength in such a challenging environment.
Yeah.
You mentioned the courthouse architecture earlier.
Oh, yeah.
How did that play into the experience?
The courthouse itself, it was designed to be airy and light-filled. A stark contrast to, the weighty reasons people gather there.
Yeah.
And that juxtaposition, it really highlights the duality of human experience. The capacity for both beauty and darkness, for hope and despair, for justice and injustice.
It's a reminder that even in the most formal settings, human emotions are always present,
Yeah.
shaping the way we seek and deliver justice.
Right.
What happened when JE finally delivered their victim impact statement?
Jay described feeling like they had lost their voice for a long time, silenced, by the trauma of the stalking. But writing and delivering that statement was a way to reclaim that voice, to use it as a tool for healing and empowerment.
I can only imagine how powerful that must have felt, to take back the very thing that was stolen from them and use it to confront their abuser.
Yeah, it was a turning point in JE's journey. But there's another interesting detail here. JE had always been a writer. It was a core part of their identity. But the stalking had a profound impact on their writing.
Really? In what way?
Well, JE shared that, they couldn't write during that time. The fear, the anxiety, the constant feeling of being watched it completely blocked their creative process. A part of them had been shut down,
That's so heartbreaking, to have something you love, something so fundamental to who you are, be taken away by such a horrific experience. It makes you wonder about the hidden costs of trauma, the ways it can ripple out and impact our lives in ways we might not even realize.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Trauma can touch every aspect of our lives. But what's inspiring is that JE was able to reclaim their voice, to rediscover their passion for writing through the process of crafting that victim impact statement.
It's almost poetic,
Huh.
using the very act of writing, the thing that was stolen from them, as a means to confront their stalker and reclaim their agency.
Exactly. And in doing so, they not only achieved a measure of justice, but also, began to heal from the trauma.
Did the stalker ultimately face consequences for their actions?
Yeah, they did. Facing overwhelming evidence, the stalker ultimately pleaded guilty. It's interesting to note that this is actually quite common. The majority of cases brought to court actually end in a guilty plea for various reasons.
So there was a sense of legal resolution. But what about JE's personal journey? Did this experience have a lasting impact?
Absolutely. This ordeal left an indelible mark on JE, particularly impacting their passion for writing. They described how they felt like they had lost their voice for a long time.
That's so heartbreaking to have something you love, something so core to your identity, be taken away by such a horrific experience.
But what's inspiring is that JE found a way to reclaim that voice, to use it as a tool for healing and empowerment. Writing the victim impact statement became like a pivotal step in that process.
It's almost poetic, using the very act of writing, the thing that was stolen from them, as a means to confront their stalker and reclaim their agency.
Exactly. And in doing so, they not only achieved a measure of justice, but also began to heal from the trauma.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful, but it also leaves us with a lot to ponder. How does one truly regain a sense of normalcy and safety after enduring such a prolonged and traumatic experience? I imagine the scars, both emotional and psychological, run deep.
That's a question that lingers long after the legal proceedings end, and it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit that individuals like J.E. can not only survive such ordeals, but emerge from them with a renewed sense of purpose and a powerful voice. This deep dive underscores the importance of speaking out against hate, of supporting victims of stalking, and of recognizing the lasting impact of trauma. It reminds us that justice, while essential, is only one part of the healing journey.
And it reminds us of the power of sharing our stories, even the painful ones, as a way to connect, heal, and inspire others to find their own voices in the face of adversity. Thank you for joining us on this incredibly powerful deep dive. We hope J.E.'s story encourages you to reflect on the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of finding your own voice no matter the challenges you face.